That again. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Yeah, okay. That's the spirit that I like to see in Baltimore. My name is Kurt Anderson. I am chairman of the Baltimore City Delegation. And today is a subcommittee hearing on the Delegation Subcommittee on Criminal Justice. And we're dealing with the broad area of police practices. We've made every attempt to let many people, or everybody in the public, know that this hearing is being held today. We did press releases to major TV and radio stations, as well as the Maryland Register, and of course, social media, Facebook, Twitter. That's as far as we go on social media. I'd like to thank all of you who have taken your time out today on a Saturday afternoon to come down and participate in what we think is an extremely important issue. We hope to hear from everybody in this room. There's no one person that's any more important to us than any other person, because your opinions are valuable to us. To that end, Delegate Carter will be explaining the question and answer period, because she's the chair of the subcommittee. But before we get to that, I'd like to introduce some of the members of our esteemed panel. All the way to my right is the delegate from the Baltimore City Delegate Barbara Robinson. She's on the Appropriations Committee. Then our Senator from South Baltimore, and I have to say all of South Baltimore, Senator Bill Ferguson. And Delegate Frank Conaway Jr. is across the street getting some of his testimony printed. He'll be in a second. And I'd also like to recognize some of the elected officials who are here today. First, from the Baltimore City Council, probably one of the longest-serving members of the City Council, not in age, obviously, but Delegate Ricky Spector. Can we give a little hand for Ricky Spector? And up until this election, and I don't know if you all do this, I consider myself the best-looking legislator in Annapolis. We have a new fellow from District 20, and you can judge for yourself if you think he's going to take my crown. Delegate Will Smith from District 20, Prince George's County. Will, stand up in the back of the room.
Oh, Will's right here.
You have to get used to being embarrassed when you're in elected office, okay? And two of the people that I'd like to mention that are here, the Attorney General for the state of, the Attorney General-elect for the state of Maryland indicated an interest in being here, but he had other things he had to get to on this Saturday. So Terrell Boston Smith is here on behalf of the Attorney General-elect, Brian Frost. Terrell? To introduce two other people who I think are important in this proceeding as well, who are either, I think they're going to testify or at least submit some extremely important information. From the ACLU, a woman with whom we've worked as a delegation in Annapolis for many years now, Sarah Love. And also from the University of Maryland School of Law, she attended the last workshop, by the way, of the Mayor's walkthrough on body cameras, Professor Lee Maddox. And arriving, as I mentioned, from the 40th District, Delegate Frank Conaway Jr. At this time, it's my pleasure to turn it over to my esteemed colleague. She's and I have been in the legislature together for the last 12 years. She is one of the most outspoken legislators, not only on this issue, but several issues. And I think that her hard work and her intelligence have made people start to listen to those of us who have heretofore had our voices unheard. And I'm proud to say that Jill Carter is the chairman of the Subcommittee on Criminal Justice. So I turn the meeting over now to Delegate Jill Carter.
that this is the first step in the road to Annapolis, January 2015. This is a public hearing that we don't often do here, but it is not the first time. We did one last week, and almost about 8 years ago, we actually did a different one down at the War Memorial Building on the issue of uncharged arrests. Some, like myself, call them illegal arrests. And that is one incident where we saw that we had a victory because we got legislation, well, not a whole victory, but we were able to parlay that momentum into legislation in Annapolis to attempt to address that issue. But I want to say that this is the way that the structure is going to be today. That everyone that will make a statement or come up to testify will have 3 minutes. And that we'll try to stick as close to that as possible. We understand that it takes more time than just that to speak on these issues. But again, this is the first step, it's not the last step. We will, at the end of the panels, take questions from the audience. At the end of the first 3 panels, and I'll explain why. The first panel, I believe, will be utilized to frame the issues, because we're looking toward legislation, and each issue, there's a legislative component to it, and I'll call a panel, not because they're more important than anyone else in the room, but either they have expertise on those issues, or we know that they will be the advocates or the leaders in Annapolis to help champion those causes and work with all of you and work with us to get that done. The second panel, I'm going to ask if you are a family member of, or if you are a victim of a negative encounter from everywhere from police brutality or excessive force of the police, or if you have had a personal experience that needs to be addressed here to come up. And it may not be everyone, but it will be the ones that are on the sign-up sheet first. Then the third panel, we will hear from law enforcement. And then after that, it's fair game. Everyone that's still here can testify, but before that, we're going to take questions from the audience of anyone in the panel. When you have a question to submit, you can stand up at the microphone and ask a question. We're going to try to limit the questions to 1 minute and the responses to 2 minutes. We are going to attempt to hear from you. So if there's just a burning question that you are concerned won't get asked, perhaps you could submit it to Mara Douglas or Janelle Brown, who should be around, to have us ask it to make sure that it gets addressed. I also just want to say thank you to Delegate Kurt Anderson, who is the chair of our delegation that is responsible for our ability to be able to do this today, and Kamara Douglas and Jamela Brown, our staff. Jamela Brown is my legislative aide, and Kamara Douglas is the chief of staff for the Baltimore delegation. They're important to all of you because as you want dates and scheduling and meetings and information between now and January and even through the session, those are the points of contact that you go to. Also, if you have questions or testimony that you want to submit, please do so through them, and they will spread it out to all of us. I have a written statement that I prepared because in the interest of time, I didn't want to take too much time. But I will just briefly say that today we're here to look at policing practices as a whole. We are not here to talk about only one piece of legislation or one aspect of it, because we believe that it's time to have a dialogue about comprehensive change in the way that we deal with policing. And so, that being said, I want to get started with our first panel. And there is a reason, a method to the madness for why these people are being called first, because I believe, again, they will properly frame the issues for all of us today. So, with that being said, I'm going to call Sergeant Lou Hobson, Attorney A. Dwight Pettit, Dr. Marvin Doc Cheatham. While I don't see her on the list, Sarah Love from the ACLU. And I think that we can have 6 at a time, so 3 on each side. So let's go. Attorney Russell Neverdon. Professor Ted Grant. And if he's still here, because I know I saw him earlier, Stephen Tabor. I don't see him on the sign-up sheet either. Is he in the house? Mr. Tableman comes in, we'll, okay, I'm sorry. Sona Kumar from the ACLU is not, is 6 persons in the next panel. Oh, I'm sorry, before I go on, I have to move on. I called Stephen Tableman to testify with this first panel because he's a retired veteran police officer who has been an advocate for some changes to the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights, particularly the 10-day period. Because we are moving on, I'm going to recognize him and also suggest that if there are questions, that you direct them to him at the next question period. But also, I'm going to suggest that he be also a point person to work with as we move toward legislative reform. So with that, on the next panel, thank you very much. The next panel. Our second panel would be victims who have personal stories or family members of victims that have suffered from police brutality or excessive force or even an extrajudicial killing. So I know that I have some members I recognize from the West family, and if possible, I hope that if we could, again, stick to the time limit and not only in sharing your personal story, but suggest what specific solution that you offer as we move toward legislative change. So to Wanda Jones, she can come up to the next panel. Who else do we have in here? Do we have any other victims or family members that are here that wish to testify? Yes. Okay, your time is now. We're going victims, family members of victims, specifically to tell your story and what you suggest in terms of legislative change, and hopefully do that in 3 minutes time apiece. Thank you. Ms. Jones.
Thank you guys for having this event. God bless you, because it's really totally needed. So I just want to thank you and your expertise panelists that took the time to hear us today. But basically, I want to make it quick because I have 3 minutes. But my brother Tyrone West was brutally murdered on July 18, 2013. And to this day, we still don't have my brother's full autopsy report. Nothing has been transparent. He was brutally murdered by 11 to up to 15 police officers on one unarmed man. Brutally murdered. Called the N-word on numerous times, his human rights. He was pulled out the car by his dreadlocks. It was just awful. Nobody family deserves to be brutally murdered. And my thing is for the change, and I agree totally with Russell Neverdome when he talked about the officers' Bill of Rights. And I think that's very important, because why should they have 10 days to get together, to stick away, to get basically make up lies and then come together? We had a whole team of police officers that brutally murdered one unarmed man. They had 10 days, and in my brother's case, it seemed like 154, and it still seemed like 491 days to this day. Nothing. It's ridiculous. Nobody family deserves to go through what my family has been and doing over this past year and a half. It's horrible. We can't sleep at night. It's terrible. And we do what we do to save lives in the community. Because it's just not about Tyrone West. It shouldn't have never been a Tyrone West, an Anthony Anderson, an Abdul Salam. Nobody deserves to be brutally beat down, brutally murdered, brutally killed. And I think, it's very important what y'all doing. And I feel as though I felt good when I was able to testify in the Chris Brown legislation piece, because that was important, because we had a guy sitting on my brother's back, David Lewis from Morgan, while my brother took his last breath, and nobody there knew how to use the defibrillator. Ridiculous. When is it going to stop? When is enough's enough? Thank you.
My name is Diane Butler, and I'm Tyrone West's mother in every sense of the word mother. That was my sister's child. She passed away years ago, and I took the responsibility to take care of her children. My question is for police. When was the beating supposed to stop? My son was on the ground screaming for the beating to stop. Was the beating was supposed to continue till he was no longer breathing, no longer moving? My son was dead, and your police officer still was kicking him in the back of his head, and he was cuffed. It was a supervisor that was supposed to come, and I guess to see what was going on and hopefully put a stop to this brutal beating. He did not. He participated. My son was hit with haymakers, as eyewitnesses told us. Why is it a supervisor? He should be fired. He was supposed to stop this brutal beating. When a man is down, pleading for you to stop the beating, what type of animals did not stop the beating till my son was dead? This is the question that haunts me, and it's going to haunt me till I die. Because all I hear is my son screaming to stop this beating. Those animals should have been terminated. Number one, because an individual died, he was unarmed. They should have been terminated. Tell your commissioner that.
They should have been arrested. To get this terminated, they can work at McDonald's. They need to be in cell blocks. That's where they need to be at, in cell blocks.
Hi, I'm Kiara Butler. I'm the cousin of Tyrone West. Basically just tying in everything that my family is saying. We need legislation so that situations like this don't happen again and again and again, and that's what we're seeing. And we're not seeing any effort upon the city to actually initiate any type of legislation, to actually pass. A lot of it is just for show, and we need action. We've had enough show. We have people here in this room right now with documentation of how to make this happen. There are people with great minds right now in this room who have ideas of how this can happen. There's a forum right now going around with plenty of ideas of what we can actually do to change this. There are plenty of groups right now in this room of what we can actually do to change this, and I'm not sure what type of venue we can have where everyone can sit down and actually write their ideas out, because we don't want any small groups to be left out or any small or single people to be left out just because they're not someone who's always in the public eyesight. We want everyone's ideas to be included.
Thank you, Ms. Jones and Ms. Butler and Ms. Butler. I think I speak for all of us when I say that we're sorry for your pain, and the reason that we are here, because there was a reference to city elected officials. We are state legislators, and many of the things that you speak about are state legislation, such as the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights. And then the other issue was posed earlier, and it's still an issue that some of it is not legislation, some of it is prosecution, and it comes to the criminal investigation. And so we have heard you, and I want to make it clear that the next panel is going to be the law enforcement officials that are here, and I'm sure that in the course of their discussion, they will address your concerns. We'll see that they do. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you.
Thanks again. Can I ask one question? I'll make it real quick. And I just want to know, are they trained to tase, pepper spray a man and throw them face down on the ground where they can't breathe? Because that's how my brother was. Face down on the ground and couldn't breathe. And then a 200-pound man sat on his back, pressing his knee in his back. Are they trained like that? That's my question. They need to stop killing us.
Thank you. Sure. Okay, so this, you all came and slipped in when I was looking to the left. Is everybody here on the sign-in sheet? Because I want to make sure I check you off. On this panel here. Your name?
You asked
Who
for
wanted to
more.
hear from the public, that you're victims? Or families of victims? Okay. Thank you. Please just state your name and I'll check you off. And again, you have 3 minutes for the presentation, and there will be other opportunities to ask questions later, assuming we can get through these panels. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Christopher Irvin. I'm one of the victims of Officer Mark Lunsford. What you're hearing, and I understand we only have 3 minutes, unfortunately, 60 days before a session. I think these kind of meetings need to happen quarterly throughout the year so that we don't have just to rush everything in 3 minutes. I'm sure there's a lot of experiences in the audience. Mark Lunsford is a detective in Baltimore City who was eventually arrested by the FBI, and he was a Baltimore City detective attached to the DEA. What he was doing was robbing people under the auspices of executing a warrant. Warrants that he was able to get without evidence, without testimony. My particular case, you said to connect with panelists. I spoke to Mr. Pettit, and I understand that his hands were tied because it was my word against an officer's. Thanks to this officer, I don't have a relationship with my 15-year-old son to this day because he thinks I wasn't around because I didn't want to be there. He didn't understand that I was in jail because of this officer who, after the fact, after I contacted Internal Affairs, after I contacted the Justice Department, he was eventually arrested later on, and I heard his name on the radio, arrested for the very things that I said he was doing. He was found at his Carroll County home with over $40,000 in cash in his home. So at what point, as the legislature, not our city officials, do we examine the laws for granting warrants to these officers? The warrant that was left at my house had no signature on it by no judge. There was no inventory list left, so everything that he took from my house, the city was able to keep and sell. At what point, as the legislature, you're members of this community, you know your constituents, you should know of these problems before 60 days out before session. We should be addressing these things actively. You don't need to wait for the citizens for some things. Some things you should know of and go ahead and attack them. We want activist judges. I want activist legislators. Thank you.
I'm not sure if you were here at the outset, but we stated earlier that this is the beginning of a path toward working toward legislative changes in Annapolis, and this is the first public meeting that we've had on this, but we expect people to work together and form coalitions from today to continue to dialogue and continue to craft various pieces of legislation. So that's what our plan is.
My name is Dwayne Davis. Everybody knows me in Baltimore as Shorty. I'm a community activist. I'm a prisoners' rights advocate. I'm a homeless advocate. And my position was, I was making a freelance independent filmmaker. I was making a movie about the Maryland politics, the judges, the lawyers, and the prison industry. Randallstown Citizens to Change. All right, I've been doing this since 2006. And it's about the murder and the death of our kids here in Baltimore, Chicago, New York, and Philadelphia. All right, long story short, on October the 15th, 2010, after Governor O'Malley and Bob Irving had their debate at WJZ, Baltimore City sent 12 Baltimore City police officers and 7 state troopers in my house without a search warrant. They came at 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 5 o'clock. No warrant and no reason to come in my house. They accused me of threatening Governor O'Malley with no evidence of that threat. Now, I called the Department of Justice, and I called the Baltimore City Police Department Internal Affairs Division. Case number 20101440, and they did nothing. Currently, I got paperwork with the White Pettit at his office asking him to represent me on this case. Most of y'all don't know me, but I'm the guy that put them toilets in front of the Towson Courthouse and the different places all over Baltimore City, and it was part of my movie and my documentary. To this day, the state of Maryland has taken my truck, my computer, and my ability to make a living in the state. I've been unemployed and unemployable since 2008. I've been working tirelessly to have my case heard. By the gentleman back here in the back named Mr. Valario, I got emails here, just like they did Kwame Kilpatrick, where I can show you where your state legislators and these issues that we are talking about, they ain't did nothing about it. They let them lock me up and leave me in jail for a crime they know I didn't commit. Doc Cheatham had 52 subpoenas that I gave him on June 30th, 2012, asking for a grand jury investigation. I'm gonna hit this 1 minute real quick. All right, long story short, if you ain't did nothing for us in the last 8 years, what you gonna do different for us now? Because I put this information in your hands. I've testified in front of your judiciary committees. This is not nothing new to y'all. So what you gonna do that's gonna be any different? I've been to your offices personally. You have this information I have here in front of you for the people. Joseph Valario has the DVD and the material, and the letter right here said that this is his letter. This is from his office. That man sitting right there. So tell me what you gonna do for us. I need my property back. I need my life back. I need my standing in the community back. I've done nothing wrong but blow the whistle on the corruption that's going on in your administration.
Thank you. Next panel.
My name is Steve Turner. I'm a former Baltimore City police officer. Started in 1987. For 27 years, I have been blackballed. I have been a whistleblower before I knew what the term meant. I thought I would be the first generation of the family to have other police officers. I was met with, in the Northern District, with excessive racism. When I turned my car over, they would say things to me like, don't eat chicken grease on the steering wheel. I've seen other officers verbally abused, and I asked them, why are you taking this subhuman type of treatment here? And my advocacy has got me in serious trouble. I've been charged with different issues when I wouldn't take a bribe or extort, where I wouldn't beat people over the head with the nightsticks, which doesn't require all that. I also have lost a friend who was a Jewish police officer. His name was Ira Weiner. He told me that there were high levels of police corruption in the Western District. I told him to keep his mouth shut and go to the feds. They rewarded him for his truth with being murdered. He was murdered when he responded to a call in the Western District. I wasn't able to protect him, and he lost his life with an axe pick in his head. My situation, I lost my first wife because I couldn't find work. And 38 jobs in 1 year I've applied for, I was overqualified for, that they didn't give me. And this has gone on for 27 years. I don't plan to lose my second wife, and my grandchild's in the back. I just want to say this, that the culture of racism and the culture of, it's a gang mentality, it's us and them, that's what I was told. When I had my 38, and they took that and asked you if you wanted a block, I went for that. We received specialized training, and I just want to tell you, the specialized training was not to give you a Hostess Twinkie, it was to kill you. Specialized training to kill you, center mass. And so when you offer a gang mentality and you give them militarized weapons, you're raising a militarized militia. So as I close, I just want to say this, that my ultimate crime was telling the truth, being subpoenaed by Attorney Harold Twin to testify against my own employer. I didn't know, because I was naive, that I was kissing my career goodbye. And as I told the truth, the jury believed me when they tried to charge an innocent man with triple homicide. He couldn't be there because he was talking to me while I was trying to help another officer serve a warrant. And they tried to get me not to testify, get the witnesses not to testify. All crimes that I agree with Leo Barrow should be in jail for. Well, they put me in jail. They took away my career, and it goes even longer than the law. It goes into other cultures or other jobs, such as sales, marketing. If they can figure out the connection, they will dismiss you. So, I mean, who gives back 27 years of life?
Thank you, Pastor Frank. The time is now 3:40, and so we are midway through this hearing, and it's important that we bring up the next panel, which is those representing the law enforcement officials or their representatives, and they will, again, be limited to time limitations for testimony, and then there will be an opportunity for short questions. And I stress. Also, I think I recognize another delegate-elect, Antonio Hayes, I believe slipped in. Is he back there? Yes. Welcome, Delegate Hayes. If you are a law enforcement office official or representative or representing someone from the Fraternal Order of Police or the like, this is your time to address us. Thank you. Is there someone else here? Okay. Please state your name and your position.
Good afternoon, Delegate. My name is Daryl D'Souza. I'm a colonel with the Police Department. I'm the Chief of Patrol.
Good afternoon, Delegate. Members of the community, I'm Colonel Garnell Green. I have the Office of Internal Oversight.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Captain Mark Mason. I'm assigned to our police academy.
Did you just offer testimony, or were you just going to start over the questions? You've heard some of the concerns today, so I wish that each of you would take time to.
I'll start. Good evening, everyone. Within the past 2 years, the Baltimore Police Department has initiated considerable change in a vital effort to improve community relations, transparency, accountability, and professionalism. The recommendations for reform outlined in the strategic plan for improvement, the Tyrone West Independent Review recommendations, as well as the Karen Kruger improvement for the Internal Affairs Investigations Audit Report, are launching positive cultural and procedural changes within the agency. The men and women of the police department have worked tirelessly and selfishly to develop and apply these reforms, as well as changes recommended by internal and community assessments. Many of these recommendations have been implemented and already yielding positive results. Created in 2013, Commissioner Bass came here, he created the Professional Standards and Accountability Bureau, which I fall under the direction of Deputy Commissioner Rodriguez. This bureau has the bulk of the responsibility to reforming the disciplinary process and accountability of the organization. Internal Affairs, Office of Internal Oversight, which I oversee, as well as the Force Investigation Team, which I also oversee, Professional Development Training Academy, which is the second in command, is captain to my right. The Written Director's Policy, which I also oversee, and the General Accountability Office does our inspections. Our overtime unit all fall under the Professional Standards and Accountability Bureau. To date, the following accomplishments have been done in our reforming our agency. As we talk about accountability and transparency, we have created a categorical use of force review board and a force investigation team to increase the standards, ethics, integrity, and accountability on police use of force. We have also developed a website in which the community can go on and see the investigations being conducted by the force investigation team. Also on that website, you can see our final report in which the findings are done after the board has made their recommendations. We have provided presentations to the Civilian Review Board and several district community relations councils on the force investigation team. Just this week, I presented a case to the Use of Force Review Board so they can see what we do. Also, been out to 2 of our districts to the community meetings to also inform them of what the force investigation team is doing out in the community. Staff Civilian Review Board members meet with, so we have commanders who attend those meetings. I'm one of them. As the Office of Internal Oversight, and we have the Chief of Internal Affairs who also attends the Civilian Review Board meetings. And we answer their questions and get feedback from them. We have created new procedures related to category use of force and in custody deaths in response to the category use of force report. In the past,
Colonel, just briefly, your time is up, so can you wrap it up? We'll be available for questions.
absolutely. So in the past, homicide and internal affairs used to work separately when it came down to the use of force and in custody deaths. The force investigation team now has taken the role in leading those investigations. And we look to improve our transparency and coming to better findings. So in wrap up, I just want to know the community know that we are moving to reform this agency.
Thank you. Next. We'll take questions after all three are testified.
Thanks a lot. First, gentlemen, thank you for coming today. I appreciate the service that you give to Baltimore City, and I appreciate the fact that you actually came here to listen to everybody, and knowing that there would be some negativity, and hopefully we can get something positive about all this. My question, Colonel D'Souza, I know that you were head of the Northeastern District Commander up there, you're Chief of Patrol right now, and you know that Delegate Conway last year introduced a bill regarding cameras on police officers. The mayor has put together a work group on that very issue, and I believe it's a statewide work group as well. In your opinion, I mean, and I don't know if you've talked with the officers in Baltimore City who are on patrol only would help change some of the way that police officers deal with the citizens of Baltimore City.
Colonel Green has a more specific answer, but to answer your question, yes, I think it would help us.
In answer to your question, I do think it will help both the citizens and the police as well. But there's some things we have to look at before we jump to the conclusion that we definitely need body cameras. Some of the things is privacy issues. Privacy not just for the police, but also for the citizens. Should a police officer have a body camera on when they come to your home? That is a very issue that we're looking at right now. Also, the cost when it comes to Maryland Public Information
Well, I
Act.
wasn't really worried about some of these
Okay.
ancillary problems. I was specifically just wanting to know if the commander of the Baltimore City Police Department, and I know you can't speak for the commissioner, but I'm pretty sure you guys have had discussions about this. In general, is the Baltimore City Police Department leaning in favor of having cameras on police officers for that reason or for other reasons?
We are leaning towards being in favor, but as I said, there's other issues we have to look at.
Okay. Second thing, Captain, you were in charge of the academy, is that correct?
I'm the number 2. We have a civilian director.
Oh, now you're number 2. All of a sudden, when I saw you outside, you said, oh, I'm the man. I get it. Yeah, I was born at night, but not last night. My question to you is, what do we do in Baltimore City to try to ensure that more African-American males get the look? I know there's a problem with a lot of them not having totally clean records, but is there any way that departments try to work around getting more African-American males from Baltimore on the police force? People who grew up here, know what the city is like, and kind of share the same experience that many Baltimoreans do.
This has been a real priority with the recruitment section. We actually have an event coming up, and it's geared specifically for city residents. One of the initiatives that we've taken in the last couple of years is the cadet program. So we get individuals that come out when they're 18 years of age. We want citizens who are committed not only to the city, they're committed to the police department, and they're going to stay. This is where their career is going to be.
What about a person who, though, has a minor, let's say somebody right now who has a conviction for possession of marijuana? Is that person excluded from the police department?
By state law, yes.
Okay, so there would need to be a change in state law. In other words,
That's
you wouldn't circumnavigate that in some way to get that person in the police department.
correct. That's correct. The state law gives the individual law enforcement agencies authority.
Okay, well, that's one of the reasons why you're here and we're asking these questions. Thank you.
I have a few questions, and I'll make them brief and shoot them out, and then you can answer them at the same time. The first one is, last session, we passed a bill that simply dealt with education and training for law enforcement officers, and it was meant specifically to address this issue of extrajudicial killing as well as excessive force and brutality. And it was, we termed it Christopher's Law after Christopher Brown, a teenager that was killed at the hand of an off-duty law enforcement officer. The FOP and pretty much the whole cadre of law enforcement representation in Annapolis opposed the legislation, and all that it did was say that we want to avoid some of the problems, so perhaps better training and education could help alleviate some of the problems down the road. The bill specifically spoke to use and level of force, life-saving, CPR, cultural diversity training, and training to handle individuals with disabilities. So the question one is, how, if at all, is that law now being enforced? And two, kind of the psychology behind resisting that type of legislation when, you know, in my view, it is a precursor to all of the other legislation that you might deem a little bit more restrictive, such as our desire to possibly now improve accountability by changing the law enforcement officer bill of rights and other things.
So what we've undertaken not only in 2014, that coincides with Christopher's Law, but we have additional plans in 2015. One of the things as far as use and level of force, we're really going to emphasize use of force that is reasonable. We're not just going to stand up in a classroom. We're actually going to put the students, both entry level and in service, through reality-based training. We have that through our facilities at the academy, and then we have our use of force simulator out at Gunpowder Range. Next year, we plan to add our decision-making course also, and then de-escalation techniques. So there's a big focus on that when we look at our police-involved shootings. How do we get from A, B, and C to when the shooting occurs? And we're really going to focus in on the de-escalation techniques. As far as encounters with persons with intellectual and physical disabilities, there's new state-required objectives for all entry-level trainees. We have a Train the Trainer on January 8th that the state is putting on to make sure that the training is consistent statewide. We've also increased our training and role-playing from, it was about 28 hours, and now we're up to 40 hours. And we've added actual scenarios. We have a partnership with the Behavioral Health System of Baltimore, and through a grant, they have a full-time staff member at our academy. So in addition to this, the training that they facilitate, she's been able to observe a lot of the training that we have. So the same lessons are being taught throughout the 26 weeks that we have them, not just that 1-week training. As far as life-saving techniques, we use the law enforcement emergency medical care course, and we have used that for the last couple of years. It's a 4-day class. It includes CPR. As part of our in-service training, this year we used a trauma management class. We've handed out over 1,000 tourniquets to officers that should they encounter a situation where it's needed, they know how to use it. And also we'll be including CPR and AED certification as part of in-service next year for all officers. For cultural diversity, one of the things that we're really emphasizing is a new program called the Community Orientation Program. A lot of our officers are not from the city, and we're working with city leaders to create a program that doesn't just start, it's a one-time thing, it's more of a partnership where they'll come in during several sessions. The first one will be a history of the city. So the trainees that we have become acclimated. We also, a part of it is that we're really focusing on, we still have more research to do, is how barriers are created or developed that cause an officer not to be engaged with the community. So those are some of the things that we're focusing on.
Thank you. When would that be implemented?
Which part?
The last part you said that
Oh,
you're
that's
developing a
our
program?
class 1501 starts January 23rd, and that's going to be implemented then. That's the deadline.
Thank you, and I just want to, I'm not sure if it encompasses this, but I want to stress that, that the impetus for Christopher's law was the issue specifically based on the number of extrajudicial killings that were happening, particularly African Americans and African American men. And so I would hope that there would be a component of that that would address specifically the race issue,
Correct.
race and class.
Do I have one more second? Okay, so we have fair and impartial policing, which really goes to that. We're not only looking for explicit bias, but also implicit bias. We want our employees to know, and when they approach a situation, that they realize that they have biases. So we're going to have them understand what human biases are and how they manifest themselves, the impact that it causes on the community, and then we're going to teach them skills for fair and impartial policing. Really kind of dial it back. We're not just going to have an instructor stand up there. We've got specific role-playing scenarios where biases can come forward.
Thank you, and I'm going to wrap this up and maybe throw it at Robinson so we can move on, but there also is resistance, or has been in the past, every attempt to modify the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights. And even experts have attested to the fact that to make sure that this Bill of Rights or these protections do what they are intended to do, to protect good officers, but also to weed out the bad, that somehow this is in the way. And so, assuming that all of you are interested in protecting the integrity of the profession and weeding out the bad officers, what would be the reason for objection to these modifications to the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights?
As we all know, the Bill of Rights is being reviewed. At this point, we cannot discuss the law enforcement Bill of Rights.
The website that you said that disciplinary actions and investigations are accessible by?
Yes, so the use of the force investigation team, we have a website, and anytime we have a category use of force, which involves a police officer shooting, in custody death, situation where officer deploys a service weapon, or a person's hospitalized, admitted to the hospital, we go out and investigate these cases. We place the actual case on the website. And at the conclusion of the investigation, we did post a summary report of that findings, the entire investigation with the findings of the board. It's now posted on the website. And you can get to that by going to the police website and clicking on the Force Investigation Team.
I'm sorry, the what website? What's the
So you
website?
go to the Baltimore Police website, and there's a link on the upper right-hand corner that says Force Investigation Team. You click on that link, and it takes you to our website, where you'll see the maps of crime in the city, as well as where the use of force are used, and also the list of our cases that we're handling. And then you can click on where the summaries are, and it'll pop up. You'll see the actual summary report that's signed off by command.
And is this available at the point of incident, or is it after an investigation?
So the point of incident, we immediately put the date, the complaint number, the location, and the type of force used. That's immediately put up within 24 hours. This is a Friday. We try to get it up on Monday. And then the conclusion of the investigation is when we put the summary report up.
Thank you. Delegate Robinson, and then shortly we will hear questions from the audience in the same rules as before, which is please step up to the microphone. You have 1 minute to ask a question, and it must be a question for the specific panel. And you know, remember to take maybe questions from everyone but the first to get there. Now, keeping in mind, there are still some people signed up to testify. This is not your testimony. This is simply if you have a question for law enforcement. Thank you.
One of the questions I wanted to ask was about the Bill of Rights, and you already addressed that. But all the training that I heard you talk about, not once have I heard anything about human trafficking. Is that not an issue? Is that not a part of your training?
Oh, no, it is. It's a state mandated objective. It gets taught at entry level, and then it's also taught at in-service training.
Would I be able to find out exactly what it is that you are being trained in? Because that's an escalating problem now. And I'd like to know what it is that you're being trained in. Would I be able to get any of that information?
Yes, ma'am.
From where?
I'll exchange emails with you, or I can get your phone number or a person that represents you, and I'll be more than happy to give them that information.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Now, earlier, at the beginning of this hearing, I called on Stephen Tabley, who's a veteran of the police department, wasn't in the room at the time. I want to acknowledge the fact that he's there. I'm going to give him a minute, if he would like to briefly just testify to what his area is, his purpose for being here, his advocacy, and then we'll move on to the questions. Thank you.
My name is Stephen Tablin. I'm a retired lieutenant for Baltimore City Police Department from Homicide Squad. At the time I retired, I was Assistant Director of Education and Training and former Chief of Police in Baltimore, Maryland. In the 1970s, we had 19 police officers shot and killed. At that time, Commissioner Pomeroy gave me exclusive rights to investigate all police-type shootings. At that time, if we had a close case, we would send the case to the grand jury. I can say at the time, we did not have a 10-day rule. I'm not saying that a police officer doesn't have the right to have somebody represent him. But what I am saying is when you wait 10 days, cases get cold, memories fade away, stories get a whole lot different. So I would say that the 10-day rule is something that we should do away with. At the time, I was suspended without pay, released to my captain who were the heaviest workers. I had to report to him every morning at 11 o'clock. 3 weeks later, I was tried in criminal court. That no longer happens, but it did back in those days.
Okay, so this looks like we're getting into the heart of things now. I want to make it clear. Please state your name, ask the question of the panel, if it's for 1 minute, and we will give them an opportunity to respond for 1 minute. But if you wish to testify, this is not your opportunity to testify. This is your opportunity to ask a question of the panel. And if time allotted, you'll be able to testify at the next group after this. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Carter. My name is Brian Patterson. I'm a lawyer in Anne Arundel County.
law that prohibits the city of Baltimore from hiring young cadets if they have like a possession of marijuana conviction, for example. And I think the implication of the answer was that the city of Baltimore would be willing or even happy to hire these folks if the state law was changed. And I think the same principle applies to some of the other state laws we've been talking about, like the 10-day rule, and like the prohibition against civilian investigation and civilian or independent hearings in the case of police officers. So my question is, if the people of the city of Baltimore, or whether it's Salisbury or Garrett County, wanted to be able to have independent review of the law enforcement agencies that they're paying for and that are living in their community and that are protecting their community, or if they wanted to abolish the 10-day rule in their community, is there a reason why, and would that impair law enforcement in your view, or is that something that you think the leadership in Baltimore could support?
The 10-day rule and
The 10-day rule and independent or civilian investigation, and currently you're prohibited from doing these things. Supervisors are prohibited by state law. All we're talking about is changing the state law to allow it to be decided at the local level. Is that so wrong?
I don't think these officers today can testify on changes to the LEOPR. That's part of the reason why we're having today's hearing, is to see where we would like to see changes. So we don't care what, I mean, look, obviously, they want to keep it the same. We want to hear what you got to say.
And so my question is really just from a law enforcement perspective, would it help or hurt if supervisors in a police department could get a statement from an officer in less than 10 days?
You can answer that if you want.
Again, we're not trying to dance around anything here. I mean, we know that the LUBR is under review. Us, the panel here, the captain, the two colonels, the colonel, Reed, and myself, we're not the ultimate policy makers in the police department. We understand the issues with the LEOBRs, but we can't come to a conclusion at this point with that. It's under review. We'd like to discuss about it more. We'd like to see things happening in the future, but we just, at this point, can't discuss it.
Next question.
I'm Kiara Butler. I'm a cousin of Tyrone West, Officer D'Souza. You were in charge of the officers of Northeast District that murdered my cousin. Could you explain why Chris Jennings was never suspended and he was also at the vigil of Tyrone West a few days after he was murdered? On your watch?
You talking about an officer?
Yes.
Corey Jennings?
Chris Jennings, and he was never suspended,
I'm not sure.
and he was also at the vigil.
Yeah, I'm not sure of a Chris Jennings. I know of a Corey Jennings in the Northeast District. I'm not familiar with Chris Jennings, though. Maybe you can share that a little bit later. I'm not sure who you're referring to.
I don't know what else to say besides that was my own question.
Next question.
My name is Jerome Bivens. I'm a criminal lawyer. I've been practicing in Baltimore City for over 30 years, first 18 years at the public defender's office. But that's not important. My question to you officers, you representatives of the people, is this course in the academy that's going to be teaching these new recruits that may come from Pennsylvania, Kentucky, who is going to teach that course that endeavors to introduce these officers to our culture? And also, this force investigation team, I couldn't find the link on your website just now. I'm just learning how to use my smartphone, so that's my fault. But how many civilians, how many regular folks, how many non-police officers are on the force investigation team? Now, I got to go, because I got to go to the bathroom and I got to do some personal tour.
From the community if anybody's interested, Captain Automax is speaking at the end of the hearing.
I didn't. Next question.
Yes, in Fields versus State and Coakley versus State murder case, the officer is still working and has been promoted. He had it substantiated that he had theft in his file, that he perjured himself in court. Do you know anything about that, and why is he still working?
Sorry, what's the officer's name?
I don't know about his name. I want to get that out.
Is it Baltimore City?
It's Coakley and Fields versus State.
I'm not familiar with that case.
I'll tell you, Carrie Sneed.
Thank you. Next question.
I'm concerned. I think it's great that we're going to start fresh with the new trainees, but so far, none of them have killed anybody that anybody in this room loves or has beaten them. So my real concern, and this includes body cams, what about the officers that are repeat offenders? And what's the name of that hit squad that killed, responsible for killing Anthony Anderson? There you have it. They were responsible for the death of Anthony Anderson, murdered in front of his family for Tyrone West. They were responsible for beating Abdul's mom. That's just who I know. So I have to ask you, while training on the bottom is terrific, what are we going to do about this unit? Is brutal. They're brutal killers. What's being done about training them?
So we talk about different types of forces being used in investigations. One thing that definitely has done is the conviction rate for child wars. Conviction rate for child wars is up to 85% compared to last year. So we're making better improvements in the conviction rate. As far as the special enforcement section team that they're talking about, they have been reformed. They're now going to wear clear identification of their police officers before they allow their not being clearly marked. So this is some of the changes being made. And then when the incident action happens, that will come with the force investigation team, we have to present to the police commissioner in 72 hours of what we found immediately on the scene, and then he'll make a determination of what the officer goes back in the street, what the officer goes to training. That's going to be done in 72 hours.
Thank you, Colonel. I'm just going to ask to speak a little, I know you're trying to do it quickly, but I believe next time a little slower and closer to the mic, because I was having trouble hearing, even I'm sure some people in the room do too. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Cranford. I'm the Deputy Director of Maryland NORML, which is the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. We heard earlier that marijuana seems to be the main reason why a lot of young black males aren't getting into the system itself. Also, marijuana and drug laws are the reason that cops can get into your house, get into your car, get into your pockets. So with the decriminalization coming up, or that just passed, I want to know how will Baltimore be policing paraphernalia laws? Because those have not been tweaked yet, but that is another way that they can criminalize marijuana. And also, if after 6 months to a year, it's shown that marijuana tickets are still being disproportionately given to blacks and whites, what actions will the police department take to rectify that?
So as far as policy goes, the written director used to fall in. We've actually redid our policy on enforcing marijuana laws with the new marijuana under 10 grams policy, a law that is put in place. So the officer now issuing citations. They also have the option not to issue citations, but they do have to seize the contraband and then send to the court for to pay the fines. They're also being trained on how to do this. So we have a training video for the officers outlining how to enforce the law. And we do know the paraphernalia more than likely will be equal out of visual. So we're not out to enforce the paraphernalia law. We're instructing officers to come in and do it.
Thank you. Delegate Frank Conway has a question.
Well, it's not a question, but I really need to respond to the question that was asked. There's no way that the officers can tell exactly what you have, what the substance is, unless they take you in and take you to central booking and have the substance analyzed. If you have a plastic bag, you will be locked up. You will be facing a charge. I think the charge is a misdemeanor, but it's 2 years and I think $500. So just because you get this ticket for whatever the substances that you have, the container that it's in, that's going to get you in trouble. So don't believe that the paraphernalia is, nothing, because that is the smoking gun. That's the charge.
Thank you. And briefly, I want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Delegate Nathaniel Oakes, who you heard about earlier as a big champion of strengthening civilian review. And also, we've been joined in the audience by Delegate-elect Jay Jalisi. Thank you very much for coming. And I think it really speaks volumes about these newly elected legislators that they've taken the time before even getting sworn in to come and hear from you. And also, Delegate-elect Corey McRae is over there on the left. Thank you very much.
How y'all doing? So I have a quick question, but I want to introduce myself. I'm Sarah. I'm here representing the Baltimore People's Power Assembly, also FIST Youth Group, Fighting Terrorism, Stand Together, and we're a youth activism group out for social justice. Right now, we're against the city curfew because we feel like it further is giving cops more authority to kill our youth. And we actually support the Tyrone West family was there at the Solidarity Center when we was going off to Ferguson, and we feel that it's very important to have solidarity demonstrations like this because not only are people getting killed here in Baltimore, but people are getting killed worldwide by terrorists. And we have emergency press release tomorrow at 2 p.m. at McKelvin Square. And if the grand jury decision is announced tomorrow, also we'll have a protest same day, same place. My quick question is, why is it that these cops, somebody already asked this question, but who's going to teach these officers? Is it going to be somebody from the outside? Also, why is it that y'all have so many provisions on who can enter the police department, but there's no provisions on y'all? Y'all could come from anywhere. Y'all can kill people and still keep your job, but a black man in the city of Baltimore cannot provide for that child because of a plastic bag. But y'all can go out and kill a whole human being and still be able to provide for your child. And I have my 5-year-old daughter right here because I'm a single mother and I'm an advocate for this because we're tired of y'all killing our youth. We're tired. And also, this and People's Power Assembly, really quick, we have a campaign to introduce community control over the police, inspired by the 1971 Black Panthers Party. This is proposing Baltimore City Community Control Board, also cop watch and community patrols, indict killer cops, and stop racism. Thank you.
Sorry, what's the question?
Go ahead,
I have a question regarding the use of data, use of force data that y'all posted. Part of what we do is catalog or archive all the use of force incidents individually. We've come across numerous incidents which y'all haven't reported on. That's first, I want to know the protocol on that and determine that. The other thing I want to know is regarding the body cameras, whether or not you believe that, as Liz said over there, that officers in the special enforcement section and violent repeat officers should be the first to be out there with the body cameras, and how that, well, that's about it. And then mainly, right here is a letter that we wrote in April 11th, 2014, that we've been giving you on 6 different occasions regarding our public information request for data regarding police involvement since 2001, officers, misconduct, and all that. We'd love to have answered at some point in the next year.
You can get a copy of the letter after you look at it.
There's a couple. I'm going to see you see this.
All right. I think your first question was about the numbers on the website. You're referring to the Force Investigation Team website?
Yes.
Okay. So that is not every use of force in the police department. That's only the ones we consider categorical use of force. And those are the ones that's actually police-involved shootings, in custody deaths, case where a citizen was actually committed to the hospital. So that's the only case that we got posted on the website. So you can correct those numbers back to say what you're seeing. The total, give me a second, I can hear, we have the total numbers for this year.
I know about this year, but I'm saying
Yeah.
how we've been requesting for it. I know you guys are starting to put the information of like number of lawsuits and all that starting from now.
Yeah.
We'd love to go and see the pattern and the trend. You know, at least in the last few years.
Yeah, and we're putting that all together, so, I gave my name and stuff, we can talk about it offline. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christina Martin, and I am the principal for a campaign titled Accountability and Justice in Medical Abuse and Foster Care Corruption. I have a police report that indicates my daughter reported being assaulted and my 2 grandchildren with her were well. I have a CPS report that said those same children were well. I have a DSS report that said those children were not abused and neglected. 8 years later, I am still asking for my grandchildren. I went to the police department June 17th. A missing persons report was issued. I followed up. Missing persons unit informed me that they don't investigate missing persons reports, that I should contact homicide. I contacted homicide, who said that that was incorrect. I needed to contact missing persons. 2 weeks later, my grandson was pronounced dead either July 2nd or July 3rd while in foster care. We know that there's 8 years of medical abuse. My granddaughter is still missing in the system. I'm saying at this point, what in the hell is going on here in Baltimore City?
We're not familiar with the case. So you want to give us the information, I can look into it, I don't.
You can Google his name, Lamar, D-A-M-A-U-D, Martin. Nobody dies twice, and nobody should be in a system for abused and neglected children when they were never abused and neglected.
Okay, if you like, once it's done, I put your information, I can look into it, but I don't have the information right now.
I will show you.
Thank you.
1 minute. Doc Sheila, request. 3 of the organizations serving on the Civilian Review Board are basically police related. Police Commissioner's Office, Vanguard, and FOD. I have a relationship with all 3 past years and current years. We would like to meet with all 3 this week to discuss your support for our efforts to strengthen the Civilian Review Board. We do not want to see ourselves pitted against each other, the community against the police. So we like to have all 3 groups. We're asking the police department to call the meeting for us, but we want to sit down. We think you agree that we need to strengthen the review board. So we want to meet with y'all this week, FOP, Vanguard, Baltimore City Police Department, to be supportive of us strengthening our civilian review board. So that is a request. And you could,
Include me in that, Doc.
with our great delegate and our chair, Delegate Joe Carter, requesting a formal request for a meeting.
Good Vanguard,
Yes, sir.
My name is Ray Kelly. I'm the president of the No Boundaries Coalition in Central West Baltimore. We actually set the neighborhoods around in the Pennsylvania Main Street Carter. So we've been doing a safety initiative this year. We've actually set up meetings. We've been working with the police department to try to find out what we can do to increase residents and police visibility in our corridor. So we've had visibility walks, we've had community gatherings, we've been bringing residential visibility. And here, 10 months after all this work, we get a meeting that says the funding is ended, there's no money to patrol Pennsylvania Avenue. So, in essence of time, my question in the beginning of my campaign was, how do we obtain community support? And I'm beyond it. How do we convince all of these people that any of this stuff is for real if you won't invest in the basic thing, which is patrols on the streets? You have the data that says it works, you have resident visibility every day, you got organizations willing to work with you. Why is something that's working not being supported by the party?
Yeah, I'd like to work with you, sir, on the increased visibility. Data shows, statistics shows that when the community and police work together, you get a reduction in crime. Last night, and again tonight, we actually had young officers that came from the academy that graduated several weeks ago. Before they get the right to go in a patrol car and actually work, they have to pay like a rite of passage, and they're deployed on the streets on foot. They were on foot last night. I was there 7 p.m. to 4 this morning. They'll be here again, up and down the.
But as an organization, how can we get committed support, not just committed dialogue?
Sure. And if you can give me your contact information, I'd love to work with you on this project.
I actually believe I have a meeting with Commander Green on the 1st, so going in, we want everybody there to make it happen.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Upshur. I'm a student at the University of Baltimore School of Law. I'm also a member of the University of Baltimore School of Law's Black Law Students Association. What I need of you gentlemen today is simply a list of reasons why we are so slow in implementing guidelines.
So as I stated earlier today when I was speaking, the issue of body cameras have a lot of things we're looking at. One is the privacy, as I talked about earlier, when the officer should or should not have his body camera running. The funding for body cameras, the Maryland Public Information Act. Some agencies are, you look at the media now, some agencies are having problems with fulfilling the MPI requests. So that's some of the things that we're looking at. There's two committees, there's a city, what the mayor's put in place to look at this project. Also, there's a state panel that's also looking at it. So there will be recommendations coming out in the near future to the mayor and to the state so they can see different recommendations from the panel.
I just wanted to make sure I'm clear. Is privacy, when they should be on, costs, and the Maryland Public Information Act?
That's some of the issues, yes.
Which one's that?
Sorry, say it again?
Which one's that? I'm sorry.
So you also have the storage issue, the video storage. You have the training issues you have to look at. You have the type of cameras you have to can use. So there's multiple type of cameras out there we have to look at. You have the type of cameras the officer can wear on top of their glasses on the head. You have the kind that can be on their chest. And you have the kind that can be on the mic. So we have to look at which ones are the best cameras as well. We don't want to have a situation where an incident happens and the camera doesn't capture it, or it's not, it's facing the wrong direction. We want the camera, we want things to be proper. We want to get one chance to get this right.
My name is Bill Good. The young lady already let me know I have 1 hour. Well, listen, first of all, I'm going to raise a couple questions and I'm going to make a couple statements. Just to show the comparison with what's happening in Ferguson and what's happening in Baltimore. What is the percentages of black officers that we have?
You know, things that all the issues that are being addressed, I hear all the concerns because I am both part of the community and I am a police officer as well. So the main thing that I see that needs to be gotten rid of is the police have an us and them mentality, which, you know, I've seen on the job, yes. And the community also has an us and them mentality. Once you get rid of that and you start accepting each other into the community, you know, police officers, they're there to help. I know a lot of guys who go out there every day with that same intention in mind. We're here to help. You know, we're not here to be enemies. If you have some bad ones, you know, over the last couple of years, I've seen, you know, the police departments, those guys, the higher ups, are axing them. They're getting out of here. But it's a process that's going to take some time. And, you know, we want to work with you guys. We love our jobs. We like doing what we do. But we just need more involvement from the community itself. Thank you.
Hello, this is Cindy Walsh, and I'm the Citizens of the State Maryland. I would just like to continue my course of thought, and it has to do with the idea of the police officers having their Bill of Rights. Well, the citizens have their Bill of Rights. The victims have their Bill of Rights. And so what we see here are laws or a system that doesn't allow the victims of these crimes a course of action if a prosecutor decides not to prosecute it. And then we have movement here in the city where we're trying to change laws surrounding grand jury and bringing cases to the grand jury. Baltimore City has something completely different that makes it harder for us to go and try to get justice that way. If you're somebody that wants to sue, like I said, the city hall for wrongful contract that doesn't make sense, you can't go to legal aid because they do absolutely nothing. They're not functional, there's tons of money sent and it's not useful. You can't go to public justice because they're not allowed to take lawsuits against government officials. Then, if you go to court, Maryland Assembly has sent the cost of legal aid to our court cases and has doubled the cost of taking a court case to court because we're paying for legal aid. And I'm just saying over and over and over, you have laws. The Maryland Assembly is especially responsible, and you are the Committee for Public Justice. So you are the people who are setting up these barriers for people to get their cases to court and to realize equal protection.
And we're also the ones that can change those barriers, is what you're saying, right?
That's what I'm saying, yes.
All right. Thank you so much for your testimony. Ladies and gentlemen, our time is up here. We were supposed to have been out here about 5 o'clock, and we ran over just a little bit. We'd like to thank everybody for their patience in terms of testifying and staying to the time limit. Two things I wanted to say. Number one, any information that we get with regard to these hearings, we put on our website. It's www.baltimorecitydelegation.com. For future events, you can look on that website. We also have the face page. What's it called? Facebook. Oh yeah, you think that's real funny. I'm sorry, did I miss somebody?
Yeah, we
Oh, Kim. I'm sorry. You get the last minute.
All right, we're here because the laws are injurious to Baltimore City residents. And we're asking your commitment to normalize those laws such that they don't supernumerate the privileges of the police department. And so what I have here, we need a new body camera law. We need a reformed law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights. We need modifications to the Maryland Public Information Act. And we need modifications to the civilian oversight and control options that we have.
You took my notes, didn't you?
Well, okay, good. And then there's another one which I'm not necessarily supporting, but the entrance criteria to get onto the police department also needs to be addressed. So there's 4 items to modify and 1 new piece of legislation. Is that what this committee is going to do for us?
The notes that I took reflect exactly what you've written down. And in fact, those are all the things we're going to look at. The chairman of my committee, the House Judiciary Committee, is here today. We've already actually talked about some of the recommendations that were made today. So yes, ma'am, we're going to look at all the things that you just said. Those are actually the salient points that I wrote down as well. So great minds think alike.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Last thing I want to say is you're all invited to a Christmas party. December the 4th, Cross Keys Radisson, the Baltimore City Delegation, Simple Shorty, is having a, is it going to be there with a camera? You know, come on. You're all invited to come December the 4th at Cross Keys Radisson. It's going to be from 5:30 to 8:30. All you need to bring is 2 canned goods. We're raising food for the Maryland Food Bank. And we'd love to have everybody there. We have many of the delegates there as well. And we could continue our discussions probably informally in kind of a holiday atmosphere. But it's all part of us getting to know each other, getting to trust each other. And please, everybody's invited, as long as you bring a couple of canned goods. On behalf of Delegate Carter, who's still here, but she's tending to do some other business, I'd like to thank you very much for coming. And I hope that you can be available at our next such public hearing. I'd be proud of having them on a regular basis and as transparent as we can, giving the notice to everybody as often as we can. Thank you very much for coming, and God bless you.